Well, well, well. Isn't it always nice to beat those losers from Columbia? Kansas wins big against Missouri, 80-60. Darryn Peterson comes back. It's a great day to be a Jayhawk. This is the Payheat Podcast, a live edition of the show. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. And just minutes ago, Kansas basketball defeated Missouri by a score of 80-60. We're going to break it all down. And if you're joining us live, you should be doing three things. It should be number one, liking the video. Number two, subscribing to the channel. And number three, sharing a comment and joining on the conversation with us. We love to hear from you, great KU folks. So if you're joining us live, drop a comment, share your thoughts, join in on the conversation. Kansas, a pretty emphatic win against Missouri. It wasn't pretty the whole game, but Kansas does end up dominating KU 80-60. Darryn Peterson returns. He looks really good. We'll talk about some of the other stuff that happened in the second half with him. I'm not really too interested in that much, to be honest. But overall, a big win for Kansas. A game they needed. They get revenge. Melvin Council tops it off with a little bit of an extra dunk at the end there for Kansas to help the celebration and get KU to that 20-point victory. Kevin, what were your takeaways from the big win?
I thought Melvin Council played a terrific game, and he won't be one of the first five things that people talk about in this one, Nick. But when you look at last year's game and you look at the impact that Anthony Robinson had with the 5 steals, KU winds up turning it over 22 times. And that was a huge fueling force behind Missouri winning that one. Council winds up playing 36 minutes. Most of them is primary ball handler. Winds up having 8 assists to just 3 turnovers. If you're working against Robinson, anytime you come out with a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, you're feeling like you're giving your team a pretty good chance. KU only commits 9 turnovers overall. And Nick, there were some parts, like you said, where it was a little more touch and go. Kansas came out, I thought, with a lot of great effort. It kind of seemed to go away for a little bit, where Kansas is kind of lax maybe a little bit in that first half. But then in the second half, Kansas builds the big lead. Missouri starts cutting it down to, say, 14 or so, and you say 13. Is Missouri going to hit a shot or two and make this thing interesting? And it just never happened. Kansas was able to keep Missouri at arm's length throughout, and a really strong performance. And like you said, a really strong close, I thought, for a team that played a lot of that sort of late second half without Darryn Peterson. But, of course, everybody's going to want to talk about that as the main thing. And, Nick, what did you see from Darryn Peterson when he did play in this one? We'll start it off there.
Yeah, I think early in the game you could tell that he was trying to warm into it, right? I thought he passed up some opportunities early in the game.
Yeah.
But to be fair, Missouri was playing him very like right. They had guys coming at him all the time, and he was kicking to open shooters for Kansas, which early in the game, KU was struggling a little bit to hit some threes. Trey White ends up hitting a couple threes, though, in the first half. But, yeah, I thought early in the game he just felt like he was trying to warm into it. Of course, he hits the 3 right off the bat to start the game, and you think, all right, here we go, But, yeah, there were some possessions where I thought he was just trying to get his feet wet a little bit and get back being comfortable again. But then you saw what he can do, obviously, from beyond the arc, right, hitting a couple threes. There was a couple times where he was able to get to the basket. There was a couple times, and, dude, I have a lot of gripes with Fran Fraschilla that we may get to on the show today. I don't know. But there was one particular play where he kind of rightfully pointed out where Peterson turned the corner and pulled up for a mid-range jump shot when it felt like he could have definitely gotten to the rim. So there were some moments where I think he could still turn up the aggressiveness, right? Could still get to that. And listen, like we talked about it, in our preview show of this matchup, it's hard to expect a guy to just do that right away when he, has been practicing but hasn't played in over a month. And then also Bill Self comes out and says during his little pregame interview with Greg Gurley that Peterson was evidently dealing with some sort of sickness that may have potentially limited him. Seemed fine to me. So I guess that's the positive. So yeah, kind of a weird situation from that standpoint, but overall he played 17 minutes in the first half. He was really good. He played really well, I thought. And then in the second half, obviously not as much. Seemed like, I think on the broadcast, they described it as potentially cramping. I was listening to the radio broadcast. They were talking about how he was at the end of the bench getting worked on. And then I think he left the bench for a little bit, then came back. But the bottom line was, and you and I were just mentioning this before we even started the show, you're up 16, 18, 15 points in the second half against Missouri. There's no need to put him back in the game, right? Like, Darryn Peterson, for lack of a better term, did his job. You won the game. He scored 17 points. Like, no reason to throw him back out there if he was dealing with something. So, yeah, all in all, I thought it was a really solid performance from him, right? I mean, that's pretty much what I expected. He hit a couple threes, looked really good. There were some moments where he probably could have been a little bit more aggressive, but, still getting back into the rhythm of things. And, Jeremy Case did a halftime interview with Greg Gurley as well on the radio broadcast. And the one thing that Case said was he felt like KU was doing a much better job offensively of the guys around Darryn Peterson, not just standing around when he's got the ball, right? Nobody was just watching it work. So there was a little bit more of that, which I think was good. And hopefully that'll continue where you'll see, guys say, hey, Darryn Peterson can go make plays, but also let's keep our offense flowing to where he can kick to open shooters. He can make plays, so on and so forth. He could make plays without the ball in his hand. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think you could ask for much more considering the circumstances. He gives you 17 minutes in the first half, 17 points total in the game. You beat Missouri by 20. Assuming he's not any more potentially injured based off what kind of was happening in the second half, that was as good as it gets, I think, from my perspective.
Yeah, and you talked about Peterson growing into the game. I wonder if some of that, too, was trying to get his teammates involved, because that's one of the things we've talked about on the show, right, Nick, is, people got used to playing without Darryn Peterson, and previously you did feel like, hey, maybe guys are standing around a little bit waiting for Peterson to do something. I thought he distributed the ball well early. He was a little bit unlucky. Guys missed some shots. This could have been like a 4-assist or so game for Darryn Peterson in this one. But overall, no, a really good performance. I did wonder a little bit. The explosion wasn't quite there, I think, which, some people would point to, oh my gosh, the hammy may just be it's his first game back, and you're kind of growing into that a little bit. I wouldn't freak out about it. I mean, the way that they were rolling him out, it looked like on the side, that's typically something you do a little bit more from cramps. And keep in mind, if you were sick the previous day, it's hard to hydrate when you're sick and when you have flu type stuff like Self was talking about too. And so I'm not saying it was cramps. I'm not saying it was hamstrings. I'm just saying it could have been different things. But ultimately, when you're at that point, you're up in the game by that much. There's no reason to put him back out there. You were just fine. He came out. He got some run. I think, Nick, if you would have said to me before the game, Darryn Peterson's going to play 23 minutes, we would have been pretty happy with that outcome. We would have said, okay, no need to play him 35 in his first game out, get the sea legs going a little bit. He did wind up playing 23 minutes, had some really good moments. One of the things I liked, not to get too hyper specific, but something to watch going forward. I thought on the national title team, there were times when they ran like little post up seals for Christian Brown because he was generally bigger and stronger than the wings that were defending him. Coming out of a timeout, they ran a little like sort of post seal for Darryn Peterson. He wound up not making the layup, but that was an interesting look that I'd like to see more of, because I do think that with his size, he's going to get matched up against guys that aren't able to handle him around the basket like that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with your point about, okay, if you're going to get 23 points or 23 minutes, and 17 points, that's as good as it gets. That's as good as it gets for Darryn Peterson.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other part about it, Nick, is we were wondering who's going to be sort of that you hate to phrase it this way, but the Robin to his Batman. And what a game from Trey White. He made several smart plays. He continues to be the best drawer of fouls I think we've seen in a Kansas jersey. Maybe since Udoka, and Udoka got fouled a lot because he wasn't a good free throw shooter, and so people's best recourse was to hack him. But he's terrific at drawing that contact. And then, Nick, the play right before the half was just such a heady play where he gets the ball thrown out to him right before the buzzer hits, looks at the time, knows he doesn't have time to go in, pulls up from three and makes it. And the difference between, the Trey White buzzer beater to me did also feel like sort of the knockout punch. You go from being up 5 points and, we played, okay, and now we're up 5 to being up 3. He hits that shot and Kansas only increased the lead from there. It felt like a huge shot at the time.
Well, and just to hammer home that point, Kevin, Kansas went on an extended 23-3 run from the last 4 minutes of the first half into the first 4 minutes of the second half. 23-3. I mean, that's the knockout punch right there. We've obviously talked so much about Kansas football and how important the middle part of the game is. And in this particular game, that's exactly what won it for Kansas. When you go on a 23-3 run like that overlapping the end of the first half with the start of the second half, that's a KO for sure. And Missouri did not have the answer for it down the second half. Now, they put some pressure on Kansas a little bit. They cut it to 14, I think, at one point. I think they got it down to 13 also a little bit later.
Yeah.
But it was classic Kansas basketball in that it never felt like KU was going to surrender that lead. It never felt like Missouri had enough to truly break through and make that a competitive game.
Yeah, this is a really good offensive team, Nick. Missouri had been held under 83 points once this season. It came in their last game, and they got held to 71. And you look at this one, you get 60, and Missouri scored some at the end to get it to 60. I mean, this was a game that Kansas came out, defended incredibly well as a team. How about Bryson Tiller and Flory Badunga, protecting the rim in this one? And that was the thing. Missouri wasn't really making shots from deep, but they also weren't getting looks at the rim like they're used to getting. And I think that was a big part of it. And honestly, nothing helps your defense, Nick, like being able to have a set defense. And that's where Melvin Council's game kind of plays back in too. Missouri wasn't getting a whole lot of pick six type plays where they were turning KU over with a chance to get out and run. For the most part, they were operating against a really good set Kansas defense. Yeah,
absolutely. Very impressive win for Kansas. They win by 20. Let's expand more on Trey White. Let's expand more on Bryson Tiller. Let's talk a little bit more about Flory, who was a little bit up and down. I want to do all that, get to more of our takeaways, and we'll do that coming up next.
What's up, guys? It is Benny Heiss, KCSN betting analyst, and Missouri, your moment is finally here. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is now live right here in the state. So now you can make every game so much more exciting with same-game parlays, money lines, props, and more, all from your phone, and it's all safe, secure, and easy to use. And listen, we know fans in the state of Missouri know game day, whether it's the tailgates, the noise, the passion. And now with DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bring that same energy to every snap, every touchdown, and every win. Right now, new Missouri customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. There's no waiting, no nonsense, just pure action powered by America's top-rated sportsbook app. So here's what you do. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code KCSN. Code KCSN. Remember, new Missouri customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. That's code KCSN. The crown is yours in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Remember, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook. Bonus bets expire 7 days after they're issued. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, please see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
This is the Payheat Podcast, a live edition of the show. I am Nick Springer, and I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. Kansas, 80-60 over Missouri in Kansas City. Big win for the Jayhawks. And if you haven't already, you should be doing three things. You should be liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and also sharing a comment. Appreciate those of you that have dropped comments and joining on the conversation with us. Kevin, you talked about Trey White there before the break and what he did. He hit 2 threes in the first half, and then you so eloquently described, what he was able to do at the end of the first half when he hits a big three to extend KU's lead. Felt like a big momentum changer for KU. But tell me a little bit more about what you saw from him elsewhere, right? He was able to draw fouls and make plays after he'd really kind of been a little bit quiet offensively over the past couple games.
Yeah, and he was a force on the glass, right? It felt like this was a game where the first guy to the rebound wasn't necessarily the guy getting it for either team. There were a lot of loose balls. and Trey White did a tremendous job of corralling loose balls, of getting tough rebounds. But to your point, the offensive pop is really what this team needs more of, right? I think they're going to be a pretty good defensive team. They do need to kind of tighten things up on the glass. He was a part of that. But the other part is, Nick, you need somebody that when you get into situations where, Missouri's cutting your lead down, they're getting it to 14, they're getting it to 13, you're a shot or two away from starting to get nervous. It felt like just about every time that happened, there was Trey White kind of leaning in to somebody or getting somebody a little bit off balance and then getting to the line. And it's just something that he does so incredibly well. And I think it's going to pair really well with a full speed Darryn Peterson when Peterson does get back to full speed. Trey White's a guy that I liked a lot, Nick, and I know you did too, coming out of the portal, because we felt like he would be a fill-in-the-blank guy. Like if KU needed him to score 20 on a certain night, he could do that. If you needed him to grab 10 rebounds, he could do that. If you needed him to defend a really good player, he could do that. If you needed him to have 3 or 4 assists, 5 assists, he's somebody that could do all of that. And it was going to be different by the night. I think we might have undersold him a little bit, to be honest with you, because yes, he does all of those different things, but I don't want to pigeonhole him as a role player, because I think that he is capable of sort of being that quote unquote complementary star, right? And in some cases, when they haven't had Darryn Peterson, he's been the primary star of this basketball team. I think he's an all-conference candidate with the way he's playing right now.
Well, and in this particular game, you mentioned him needing to get rebounds. Kevin, he pulled down 13 rebounds.
Yeah, 13.
I mean, he was KU's best rebounder. Yeah, 13 in this particular game. I mean, he did it all for KU in this one and ends up going 7 of 8 from the free throw line as well, like you mentioned, with him drawing fouls, and hits 3 threes also, including 2 in the first half, then the third one at the end of the half. So, yeah, an excellent game from him, and I think you're right. So much of our conversation, I think, in the preseason and leading up to this year was kind of revolving around this question of like, all right, if Darryn Peterson's going to go out and when he's healthy, give you 20 to 25 a game, who will be the secondary scorer, right? Who's that secondary guy? Kind of seems like it might be Trey White at this point, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it was possibly going to be Melvin Council, and I thought Council really did a nice job in this one of playing under control. There were a couple really nice instances where he was able to attack when Missouri's defense wasn't set and get out of there in transition. But I think that that's probably more Council's comfort level, right? I don't know that Kansas wants Melvin Council to be that 14, 15 point a game guy at this point. I think that might be Trey White after what we saw today, after what we've seen the last few games. I thought this was we said it in the open. I thought this was a really strong showing from Council as well. And I think this is kind of what you would hope or expect to see from Council moving forward a little bit too. I know you wanted to get into Bryson Tiller and a guy that I thought had some really nice moments in this one, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't score much in the first half, but man, it felt like he basically took over the game in the second half. I mean, he was so impressive in that second half with what he was able to do. Had some dunks, was getting the ball, and he got credited with, I think, 5 blocks. I was listening to Brian Haney and Greg Gurley on the radio broadcast, and they were talking about how some of those dunks might have been, put to the wrong guy. And I don't know if Tiller had all those guys, because I think Florida had a couple, but yeah, a really outstanding game for him. He had a fantastic stretch, early in the second half. And that's so nice to see, because we saw him obviously performing so well to start the year. And let's be honest, he dipped quite a bit in his productivity.
He hit
over
that
the past
freshman wall, right?
Yeah. He dipped quite a bit over this past couple games. So to see him sort of, have a first half where he wasn't really contributing a bunch and wasn't scoring a lot, and then it just come out in the second half and just go show us what he can do, I was very, very impressed and very pleased with what Tiller showcased in the second half.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the parts too, Nick, is we've seen Tiller kind of at times maybe stick a little bit to the perimeter. And, it's something he can do, and there have been some really positive moments from that. Look at the first half against North Carolina, obviously. But I think he really has a great impact on this team when he's, sort of attacking around the rim, when he's cutting to the rim and doing things like that and playing on the interior. He shot 5 of 8 for free throws. That would be sort of my one gripe, is he left maybe a point or two on the board at the line. But generally speaking, with his size and his skill level, and especially with people trying to make it to where Flaherty isn't the guy that beats them down low, he's going to get opportunities. And I think Flaherty has shown that he can pass the ball down low, and so you can get sort of some high-low action. You can get some action with him cutting to the basket and all of those things. But no, great bounce back from Tiller on both sides of the ball, because there have been some times, I think, where he's had kind of shaky stretches defensively as well. And in this one, man, if you were going at the rim, you were having to get the ball over KU's length. And I think that's one of the things that makes this team so tough right now from a defensive standpoint, is you have to finish over not just Flaherty, who's obviously a tremendous shot blocker, but you have to finish over Tiller as well.
Well, we haven't really truthfully talked about Flaherty much so far on the show. He ends up with a double-double in the game, Kevin.
Quiet double-double.
What did you think of what he did out there this afternoon?
Yeah, quiet double-double somehow. Yeah. And that was the thing. I thought there were the officials, I thought, were a little shaky kind of both ways. I'm not using this as an excuse for KU. I'm saying it was kind of both ways, honestly, in terms of what constituted a foul and what didn't. And there were a couple times where I thought Flaherty kind of got the ball in position and felt like maybe he got hacked a little bit. I think the same thing happened to a couple of Missouri's post guys down low. Mitchell ate some fouls for sure that were not called, but Flaherty very easily could have had, a 14-point game or somewhere around there. As it was, his, obviously it's nice when the guy can basically jump up into the rafters at T-Mobile to catch a lob, and that's terrific. You didn't see a whole lot of Kansas running possessions through Flaherty like you see a lot of times. It felt like, specifically when Darryn Peterson wasn't out. But I think this shows why Flaherty can be so effective, Nick, is you don't necessarily have to run a ton of offense for him specifically for him to get double-digit points. And he's going to impact on the glass as a shot blocker. Did get in foul trouble again in the first half. You wound up seeing Paul Mbia out there. The game was pretty fast for Mbia today. You'd like to see Flaherty avoid foul trouble as much as he kind of gets into foul trouble early in games. But ultimately, I thought he did a pretty nice job in this one. A quiet performance, but one that I think if you went back and rewatched, you'd be like, oh, Flaherty maybe played a little bit better than I thought he did on first watch.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is something that you said, which is Flaherty is the type of guy that, like you mentioned, you don't have to really run offense for him. He can go make plays, off of missed shots. He can go create extra second chance opportunities, right? And for him, the plays that you run, the plays that you run for him are the lobs, right? You just lob it to him. I mean, those are the plays that you try to run for him. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of him, is that when he's out there, you don't necessarily have to run stuff designed to get him the ball, and he still is able to find ways to be very effective offensively, which I think is a big plus. And you're right. I think this is a game where, watching it live, you were thinking, man, Flaherty's been kind of quiet. I don't think he had very many points in the first half, wasn't really doing much. And yet still you look up and he ends up with 11 rebounds in the game. Obviously was really strong in terms of getting shot blocks as well in this game for Kansas also. So he was still able to find ways to impact the game so much. But again, the biggest key that you mentioned is he's got to continue to stay out of foul trouble. I will say, though, I thought it was a big positive that Bill Self trusted Flaherty late in the first half with 2 fouls and put him back out there.
Yes.
That's something that I would be curious to monitor over the course of this season, because that's not something Bill Self does. That's typically not, we saw with Trey White actually at the Players era, he had 2 first half fouls and Trey White ended up not playing the rest of that half. Bill Self trusted Flaherty a little bit. I think part of that was what you also mentioned with Paul Mbia. Mbia is right now, he's the type of guy that you basically, in emergency, he can play for like 2 to 3 minutes. He's just not there yet. So as long as that continues to be the case, it's critical that Fleury does stay out of foul trouble, because then at that point you're basically down to Bryson Tiller essentially as a guy who can play big. So that's something that's very important. Now we'll see as the season progresses if Paul Mbia looks more comfortable and things start to slow down for him to where then he's able to play a little bit more of extended period. But until that happens, you absolutely need Fleury to stay out of foul trouble in the first half, and you just need him to continue to be effective.
By the way, Nick, try to have as much confidence in your life as Elmarco Jackson did when he tried to absolutely yam on a big guy from Missouri, because he went into that lane with murder in his heart, and like when you could see like, oh, he's not going to pull up or he's not going to do whatever, he's going there. The level of irrational confidence right there. I mean, you got to try and be that confident in your own life, right?
Yeah, I mean that was crazy. That was crazy.
But no, I think, you know, Fleury did some good things. Bryson Tiller did some good things. And Mbia was caught looking at the bandit. It almost looked like his back was turned to Mark Mitchell as he was coming down the lane, and he got caught a little bit. But yeah, to your point, big men, even when they've been really raw, have tended to polish up quite a bit under Bill Self over the course of the season. You know, it's easy to remember Silvio just looking awful early on when he came in. And then by the end of the year, he's helping you win the Big 12 tournament. And I'm not saying, one, that you want to be in that situation where you're depending on Paul Mbia to have to win the Big 12 tournament. But I am saying, you know, I'm interested to see how that development goes. If you can get him 3 minutes here, 5 minutes here, if he does start to polish up, feel a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, the length there is tremendous. And if he can buy you a few minutes, that's a good thing. I will say one thing that I noticed, Nick, that isn't going to be a major storyline or anything like that. I was surprised Jaden Dawson didn't play more in this one. He comes in at the very end of the game, winds up making a three-pointer at the end. And I get, hey, you got Darryn Peterson back, so everybody slides down a spot on the depth chart, right? And Elmarco Jackson's been playing well. Jamari McDowell has earned his spot in the rotation as of right now as well. But I was a little bit surprised, especially with, I think, how much we value Jaden Dawson eventually hitting those outside shots that could really pay off for Kansas, to see him not come out until the game was already decided there in the last minute.
Yeah, that did surprise me as well a little bit. I have a bit of a take as to why that may be the case that you touched on. We do have to take one more final break, so let's take that real quick. We'll come back, share some more final thoughts about this game, and maybe look ahead to what KU has coming up on the schedule. We'll do all that coming up next.
I'm Brett Goodwin, one of the owners of The Learning Tree. The Learning Tree is a neighborhood toy store in Prairie Village, Kansas. This has been here in this location since 2000s, and my husband Alan and I purchased the store in 2023. Alan and I grew up in families where we've always wanted to have a business together. Alan grew up, for instance, his parents had a jewelry store. I worked in a local toy store here in Prairie Village when I was growing up. When this opportunity happened in 2023, we knew right away we wanted to contact them and pursue the store. We wouldn't have been able to get the store without the team at Emprise Bank. From the day we contacted them, they knew what we needed to do, which was very helpful. I would absolutely recommend the team at Emprise Bank to anyone looking to secure a business. We worked with Emprise from day one. They were extremely helpful. They were always great resources. We talk to them frequently. They know the area. They're very friendly. We know who we're going to talk with, and they know what we need to do. We hope we'll see you at the Learning Tree.
This is the Pay Heat Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network, a live edition of the show. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Nick Springer, and I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. Kansas wins big over Missouri, 80-60. Darryn Peterson comes back, gives you 17 points in 23 minutes. All in all, great day for the Jayhawks and Kansas City defeating the Missouri Tigers. Kevin, before the break, you talked about Jaden Dawson a little bit, and I also want to get to sort of the double tech situation, which was a bit of a debacle. But as it pertains to Jaden Dawson, I would just say this. I think considering what Jamari McDowell has given you up to this point, I wasn't really that surprised to see McDowell going in and Dawson not really playing until the end of the game. McDowell's been genuinely very good, and he's been very, very good in his role. Kevin, he's only attempted 2 non-threes this season. Two non-threes. That's a guy that knows his role. That's a guy that understands why he's on the floor, which is play solid defense, do your job on the defensive end, and then when you're open and you have an opportunity, take those threes, and if you can knock them down, you're going to play. And that's exactly what he's been doing. You know, he ends up how many threes did he hit today? Just 1, I believe, right?
I think he hit 2, didn't he?
No, he hit 2. Yeah, he hit 2 today. Yeah. So a great example of a guy that just understands, you know, what he's supposed to be. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right.
A great example of a guy that just understands what his role is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that when you look at the Jaden Dawson role, that's being filled right now by Jamari McDowell, and I do think Dawson maybe has a little bit more potential as a scorer. You know, when he's not shooting from behind the arc, he gives you a little bit more pop in terms of what he can do off the bounce and things like that. But Jamari McDowell is also showing leadership and steady ball handling and things like that maybe erase some of that stuff. And so I'll be interested to watch that thing play out over the course of this season. By the way, Nick, for those who watched our preview show, we talked about Missouri is not good at defending the arc and how Kansas is going to have opportunities from deep. Jayhawks wind up 9 for 21. That's over 40% from 3 in this one. KU took, I think, 8 threes in the first 8.5 minutes. So it was obviously something that they were seeing as well. And so I do think this was a game that going in, you felt like Kansas is going to get those looks. Will they knock them down or will they not? And Kansas knocking down looks at that sort of high percentage certainly bodes well, I would think, because there are going to be teams with the way Kansas attacks the basket, with the way that Kansas has size around the basket, that are going to try and contract inside. And so if you can knock down those open looks from the outside, this team's offense gets so much more dangerous.
Well, and you know who helps with that? Darryn Peterson. When he's on the floor, he draws guys to him, and that leads to a lot of more open threes. So that's another big factor as well, is the Darryn Peterson effect.
Yeah, I 100% agree. By the way, you wanted to get into the double technical situation a little bit, and I thought, one, it was such a silly thing. And has anybody checked in on Robinson to make sure he's okay? I mean, I know he did return to the game afterwards, but you know, after such vicious contact and Jamari McDowell knocking him to the floor with such force, you know, I was worried his season was over. And so I'm just glad he was able to return to the game. But also, Nick, I mean, and I'm not anti-Fran at all. I mean, I've talked to Fran quite a bit, you know, when I was at CBS and 24/7 Sports. I've done articles with him and everything. But I'm not sure what he was looking at in that specific instance when you're seeing the replay over and over again, where it felt like McDowell almost came in as a peacemaker. Robinson got in his face, and McDowell just kind of tried to clear him off a little bit, and Robinson just got yeeted into the solar system, apparently. And you know, Fran is out there being like, oh, he pushed him down. And so that was one for me where I was just kind of like, what is Fran watching on this thing?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was the biggest nothing burger really ever. Like, to me, it felt like it should have been to me, I would have said no technicals, right? Like, nobody gets anything.
Yeah.
If anything, you just go to – yeah, exactly. If anything, you just go to Robinson and be like, hey, man, here's your Oscar, but you're good. You don't have to do that anymore, right? like that would have been my response. It's just – and then the weirdest part was, did you see when they did the weird thing where they brought everybody on the floor together, and it was like the most bizarre thing?
Yeah, for sure. I thought it was interesting. Self didn't talk about the hamstring, according to Henry. The thing that he said was, this time yesterday when Peterson was laying on the training room table, we didn't even know he'd play. A lot of people are saying they think that's because of the sickness, but apparently it was touch and go whether Peterson would play as of yesterday, at least. So to our point again, to get 23 minutes out of him, I would focus more on that part versus KU not forcing him back in when you're up by 15 in the second half.
Oh, 100%, 100% agree, 100% agree. And that kind of leads into what I would say next, which is Kansas is entering by far the lightest portion of its schedule in terms of number of games, times in between games, and even their opponents in those games. It's games where it's basically you're going to play NC State on Saturday. Then you're going to have a long break before you play Towson, and then another long break before you play Davidson. And then you play on the 22nd. Your next game won't be until January 3rd.
Yep.
So there's absolutely zero reason to rush Peterson back under any scenario in this particular case, because you're up big in this game. You're going to have a long time in between games. So if he is sick, right, if that was more part of it than maybe the hamstring specifically, well, now you've got 6 days to make sure that he's able to get healthy, literally healthy, as in not sick anymore. And then on top of that, making sure that that he's good to go hamstring wise before you play that game against NC State. And then again, you're going to then go into your 2 easiest remaining games of the non-conference schedule, both at home. You're not going to be leaving Lawrence. You're not going to be traveling at all for an extended period before you enter conference play. So yeah, the fact that he did what he did today, I think is fantastic. And I'm very pleased with it. And now you have an opportunity here in this next month to really make sure you've got plenty of time between games. You can make sure that he's fully ready to go, and then you hit the ground running in conference play.
Yeah, and I think it's been encouraging that he's been practicing in full, which is what Bill Self has said multiple times over the last week. And so guys don't usually practice in full, and then they're like, game comes, I'm out, guys. So I really do think, a lot has been made out of this. I get it. You land the number 1 player in the country, you want to see that guy play, right? Like it's been something you've been looking forward to for a long time. You want to see him on the court. I understand that. I am empathetic to that. But I think that at the same time, you have to look at what this team's goals are. And nobody's going to care if you go into conference play with 4 losses because he didn't play a ton. If you go to the Final Four because Darryn Peterson just dropped 28 on Duke in the Elite 8. And so I think that's the big thing about this is, take your time. Get him fully healthy. Let him continue to practice and find himself, because this is a team that doesn't have goals for exiting December as the best team in college basketball. They want to have a chance to be the best team in college basketball at the end of the season. And so I think they've handled it cautiously, but I also think they've handled it correctly from that standpoint. And to your point, I think that the best thing that could have happened today was pretty much what did happen. You get 23 minutes out of him. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a bit. He winds up scoring 17 points. He does some really great things. And now you get almost a full week before he has to see the basketball court again. Just keep going with this process and enjoy Darryn Peterson in January, February, and March.
Big win for Kansas here today. As you mentioned, Darryn Peterson, obviously a big part of that with 17 points, 20-point victory for the Jayhawks. They're going to play NC State, which old friend alert, Darian Williams, or I don't know. We had this discussion, I think, before. Is it old friend alert? Is it old flame alert? I don't know. What do you want to go with here?
I think we could call it old flame alert, or I think we called it old crush, right? Was what we called it previously.
Oh, okay, yeah. Old crush alert. Darian Williams and NC State coming up next Saturday, the 13th, which is, by the way, the day before my birthday. So happy early birthday to me, I guess, potentially with KU, hopefully winning that game. But as it pertains to this one here this afternoon between Kansas and Missouri, Kevin, any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
No, I thought if you went into the day saying, hey, Darryn Peterson's going to play 23 minutes, he's going to play the way that he did, and you're going to beat Missouri by 20, we all would have taken that. And I think that I don't want to, take the wind out of anybody's sails, but I think that anybody looking at this game as more than that from a negative standpoint and saying, oh, well, this or that. No, enjoy your 20-point win in the border war over Missouri. Enjoy getting Darryn Peterson back. He's going to more basketball at the University of Kansas after this, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And Nick, we do work for KCSN, which is primarily, I think, a Chiefs network. And so let's let's go out and see the Chiefs get a win later on Sunday and have a heck of a sports day.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think for some of us, the term enjoy the rest of your Sunday may depend on what happens tonight.
Sure.
If you're a Chiefs fan, when Kansas City takes on Houston. So, which, by the way, if you are a Chiefs fan and you're here on KCSN, KCSN is going to be live after the game with the KCSN postgame show. So we'll highly encourage you to go check that out if you're a Chiefs fan, to hear some of the analysis of the Chiefs on that side. If you're not a Chiefs fan, we're happy to have you here as well. Obviously, if you're a Kansas fan, and we appreciate your support. I think that's going to about wrap it up for this edition of the show, a live edition on the Sunday afternoon. Thank you so much to you guys for tuning in this afternoon. For Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer. We'll be back very shortly, probably talking more KU basketball. Also going to talk more KU football as well. But until then, he's Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. We'll talk to you again soon. See ya.